What's up, Gemini? Alright, so we got a card description, and then we'll go into the actual reading, right? And this card was pulled from the Herbal Astrology Oracle deck, and this is by Adriana Ayala's. Okay? And the card itself is Poppy with the subtext of dream. Mystery of dream time, the great unknown, breaking addictive habits, releasing unhealthy relationships, aligning to new intentions. And the earliest references to Poppy are found in the ancient lands of summer, located in what is now Iraq, Kuwait, Sumerians. I'm going to read that again. The earliest references to poppies are found in the ancient land of summer, located in what is now Iraq and Kuwait. Sumerians grew poppies all the way back in 3400 BCE and cultivated the plant for both its medicinal and recreational use as opium, calling it Hulgil, or the joy plant. The euphoria-inducing plant quickly became a staple of cross-continent trading. It first gained influence in Assyria and ancient Egypt. Eventually, it was one of the most important and profitable products being transported on the famous Silk Road across much of Asia. Civilizations rose and fell, but poppy remained in many traditions. By the early 1800s, this unassuming flower led to mass addiction and the Opium Wars. In 1806, morphine was isolated from poppy and named for the Greek god of sleep, Morpheus, because of its sleep-inducing properties. It was hailed as a godsend with extraordinary ability to try to numb any pain, no matter how severe. Next came codeine, another powerful pain reliever. Pharmaceutical companies began to manufacture heroin from poppies, and it was indeed a popular medicine for a long time before its addictive properties were brought to light. It's now listed as one of the most harmful drugs in the world, even though to this day its raw material is used to manufacture dozens of pharmaceutical drugs. Poppy's piercing dual nature and history are closely representative to that of the Devil card in the tarot. The devil represents the darkness of material possession or obsession, addiction, and pursuit of false ideals for the sake of vanity and personal gain. The constructs of this reality, Saturn, have enabled contorted darkness that does not belong to the soul's signature of this divine flower, Neptune. Look deeper through the lens of her beauty and find that she embodies the mystical magic of the dream time, the place of the unbound potential where we regenerate daily and commune with the divine. Be aware that excess and abuse of mystical powers or substances means that you'll likely end up lost in her dark labyrinth. Break the temptation and addiction to thought patterns and experiences that lead to escapism and empty intentions, and align to the light found within the mystical darkness found in the dream time. I think the first thing I'm going to say, everybody's like, go figure, poppy, whatever. But the idea of addiction, if you guys are in any case, if there is anybody out there that is struggling with the concept of addiction, you need to understand something. There is a 12th house phenomena that is related to really the concept of addiction, and 12th house represents the spectrum of things, but the 12th house, in addition to addiction, it also represents spirituality, the relationship that you have with the world of the unseen. If you do have any type of addiction, type of phenomena that could be plaguing you in any way, shape, or form, you need to understand that the manifestation of things right now. That is how things are right now. And a lot of you, unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand that the idea of the addiction itself, it has an energetic value to even be caught in that particular idea, right? So the idea of an inoculation, and like why we get vaccines and stuff like that, the idea is that we expose ourselves to a virus, and then our body knows how to fight that virus. We have a new awareness, we have a new understanding to fight that virus in the future. When you're able to fight addiction in any way, shape, or form, you need to understand there's a very real value to that, right? That there's a you've been there's a new resilience that comes with a person who fights and is able to combat and to successfully get off of and get back on track. This idea of what you represent, when you're able to see that and come back, you think, of course, you'd be more understanding of the concept of addiction. You'd be less likely to really fall back into that that trap again, or you'd kind of develop a tool set to be less likely to fall back into that trap again. But also, 12th house represents a lot more than just addiction, right? This, and we'll call it an inoculation. I'm not sure if I'm using that term right, but the idea here is that when you're able to say, I am no longer, like I am fighting and have beat addiction, or I am actively beating addiction, you don't understand, but that is translatable to say that, oh, I am the world of the you look different. So you look like you have calluses when it comes down to the world of the unseen, that you can't really, that the modern day society won't quite understand, right? It like 12 hours it rolls over a spectrum of things, but yeah, addiction, escapism, things like that, of course. But it also rolls over spirituality, it rolls over creativity, it rolls over so much. When you think about those particular calluses that you've gained there, I want you to understand that whatever it is, you need to understand that there is value. There is tremendous value, and you can do things and partake in things that other people may not quite understand the dimensions to where you really are growing, and how you're growing, and in what ways you're growing. Right? So like picturing somebody like somebody like, oh man, it's too late for me to go back to school. I don't want to be like one of those, whatever. But you probably do really good in this field, right? And I say this with the kind of the sense of, hey, just going to any school, you need to kind of like look and do the checklist, like, hey, what do I want to be? What's the field like? Are there people hiring, stuff like that? But when you actually go into school and you think like, oh, I'm not gonna be as as valuable as these other guys or whatever, no. Absolutely not. That's not the case. In a lot of cases, you don't understand. Like, you have a lot more to attach information to after you go through certain things. And this is with age or in general, but also with addiction, right? The idea here is that you're learning things, and how resilient things stay in the mind. I'm not saying that quite right, but the idea here is that you draw stronger connections when you have more to connect to, right? So when you have more, more things for that web to connect to. If I'm picturing like a web shooting out, like if you have more of that web finding purchase, then that web's going to be much more stable there, and it's going to be able to connect many more things. And a lot of you guys may need to understand that in general. But the idea here of the addiction and the world of addiction, you should understand, or not addiction in general, but what comes out of that is sometimes you need to be aware, because some things can seem valuable. Some things can seem very valuable, right? Like the way we live today, right? It's very much a sick society, right? And the idea here is that when we live like this in a sick society, addiction may come across to everybody else as, oh, this person seems successful because they're we'll say like some kind of like private equity guy or something like that. I don't know if any of y'all are in private equity and you're doing kind of like things that they're wrong. That's just like, hey, you need to understand that there's a very real price that we pay when we develop and we use our talents for things that really aren't going to be beneficial to society, and especially nowadays, in terms of the idea of a renaissance in general. But understand that this idea of when we look at life, what we're able to do, the things that are addictive, that we don't use that word for everything, but it is something that's out. It is very much something that's like it's something that's kind of could be ubiquitous, and we're just in the moment. For instance, like the idea of cell phones in general, which interestingly enough is ruled by Gemini. It could be addictive in a lot of cases. There could be such a strong impulse to really get on a phone and do a lot of the get on social media and try to get likes and things like that, and we really don't have an understanding of what is life supposed to be like. What and is this really healthy? Because in the future, they may very well look at us as the lab rats in a lot of cases, right? The people who just, like the time period where we just let the weird tech bros do whatever they want, and that's not, we got to be careful, because a lot of these companies, they're treating us like numbers, and this is kind of like, when you get treated like a number and as a graph, that becomes extremely dangerous, right? When you see a life as a number, hey, if I get this much time on my app, I can, I get X amount more dollars. That's dangerous. That is dangerous, and that can quickly become something that you don't want to go down those particular dark paths. You don't want to go down those particular ways. So in terms of this idea, you should understand that there is a level of what's happening today and what needs to be done for the correction, and you want to start to kind of posture yourself to be on the corrective side of society in general. You don't want to just do things and essentially just be along for the ride and saying that, oh, this was just how things worked, right? There's a guy, there's a Senator Frank Church or something, right? He came in, he's one of these politicians that came in, and he did like this famous committee, right, where he kind of really exposed a lot of what was going. This committee was the one that famously exposed like J. Edgar Hoover spying on Martin Luther King and what happened there. But in this meeting, in this particular committee, it came out, it was like, hey, look, we're looking at a lot of cell phone companies because I want to say this was involved with FBI, like trying to like just increase the surveillance state. But the idea was, hey, what do we do here? What's going to happen with these particular things? Because these guys, they were just following orders, and that was the thing, right? I want to say it was Frank Church who just made the decision, the absolute decision, to say, hey, no, put it in the publicly available report and don't redact those names. It was like, hey, no. When they do something that is morally wrong, when that is just not even lawful, but they were following orders, they need to be made accountable, right? This isn't something that the administration doesn't really decide. The current administration isn't the one that's going to decide what's lawful and what's going to be they're not the ultimate purveyor of morality. Right, the public needs to know that these people listened to the FBI when they called and they said, hey, we want to spy on everybody. And you want to start posturing yourself to really be a part of the solution, be a part of the correction. And in any case, I'll see you next week, Gemini. Have a good week.